Are you trying to take your rib game to the next level? Do you want to get to that competition rib kind of quality? Or whether you're a first-time smoker and you just want to start with all the best practices, in this video, I'm going to show you how a 5-time world champion pitmaster smokes his ribs. And we're going to do the whole thing from start to finish. Whether you're a seasoned smoker, see what I did there? Or if this is your first time, the professor is going to lay it all out to get you to that amazing competition barbecue. Just the most incredible stuff. Now, if we're meeting for the first time, my name is Michael Ponzio, and in this video, I'm going to take you through all the things I learned in my Pitmaster certification with Tuffy Stone.
Treat the smoke like salt and pepper.
Perfect resistance. So we're smoking St. Louis ribs today, and we're using Smithfield ribs. This video is not sponsored by Smithfield, but they did host the Pitmaster classes, so you kind of see their logo popping up in a few different places. Let's talk about what we're looking for the ribs when we want to actually identify if we have a great rack of ribs to smoke. You want to find nice, meaty ribs. You don't want the bone popping through in certain areas. You want to know you have a nice cap of meat. We're going to trim off all the little flaps of meat that are going to burn, caramelize, bring in a bitter flavor to our actual pork as it's smoking. We're going to knock the ends off, that little flap of meat and that one little rogue bone. And then this is a really, really cool trick, is using a cutting board to line up the ribs to make sure they're squared off, and then taking your knife and running it along the edge of the cut bones on each side, and that's going to give you that perfect rectangle competition looking rack of ribs. Next, we're going to peel the back off. You want to get under there with a spoon or a finger, take that membrane off. So a paper towel is a really great tool to do this with. And you're just going to kind of work it. It peels a lot easier if it's cold. And once you kind of get it up a little bit, it's just one smooth pull. And if it rips on you, well, you get in there with a paper towel to the other part, and you just kind of grab the piece that you didn't get. But here's a really awesome tip from Tuffy about cleaning up the rest of the rack.
But sometimes when there's a lot of fat in here, I take a spoon and I just scrape it for competition barbecue.
Finally, we just want to go in and clean up if there's any chunks of fat or connective tissue that we want to go through to make sure that we have a nice even cap of meat. There's a lot of fat and marbling within the actual meat of the ribs themselves, so we don't need a lot of big chunks on top. All this is going to do is get in the way and kind of hurt your smoke grab on the rack itself. Now, if you're doing competition, this is a really awesome tip from Tuffy about how to select the right ribs for your competition barbecue box.
For a competition, I will trim this back a little bit because this meat's a little bit soft. But right in here is more than likely where I'm going to get my ribs.
So the next step is seasoning, and seasoning is everything, right? I mean, it's so important, and every single person seasons differently. For this one, we're using the seasoning from the Cool Smoke Cookbook. It's absolutely fantastic. I'll link it down below so you guys can check it out. But it's Tuffy's cookbook, and it's really well laid out. Now, in this seasoning mix, it's brown sugar, sweet paprika, chili powder, salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and cayenne. Absolutely fantastic. Simple, clean, a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of heat. Really nice on the ribs. Now, let's start talking about how we season the ribs, because I had an early morning seasoning session with Tuffy that was honestly the most amazing time in my life. So when you're seasoning the ribs, first thing you want to do is kind of glance over them, make sure that there's not any other loose little scraps of meat that you might have to knock off. And then you're going to place them. What we did was we placed them on a table with some aluminum foil. Just to be clean, you can use a sheet pan or plastic wrap or anything like that. So you can see we've kind of spaced these ribs out, right? And there's enough space for the seasoning to kind of hit the sides but also fall down onto the table. When you're actually taking your shaker, and a shaker is the way to go. I'll link up the great shaker there. But if you guys have a different technique, I'd love to hear it. But you want to just kind of very lightly snowfall it over the ribs all the way down and just lightly season until the meat just kind of disappears. And then the next step we're going to do is actually take our hands and press the seasoning down onto the meat. And this is going to kind of lock it in before we flip it and do the same to the meat side. If you look here, this is a process. It actually takes time to properly season your ribs. Once we get that blanket of seasoning on the top, we're actually going to press it down again, pick up the ribs, and take the sides of the ribs, the cut part of the bones, and press it onto those little pockets and pouches of seasoning that are on the table. So we're not wasting any, but we also want to make sure the flavor is penetrating from all angles. So once these are completely seasoned, we're going to let them sit for an hour and allow that rub to kind of soak in and mature and develop. And it's going to have some chemical reactions with the actual pork itself. So what's going to happen is the seasoning is going to start to react with the pork, and there's going to be a lot going on there. And it's going to actually, the salt is going to pull some moisture out of the pork, and then the pork's going to reabsorb that moisture with the flavor. It's also going to create a gel on the top that's going to help the smoke flavor start to form, help the bark grab, help the smoke ring grab, Really, really important process. You can season them and throw them right on the smoker, but actually letting them sit and mature for this hour is a huge difference in how the sugars caramelize and how the flavors come through, all of it. So tell me, guys, what do you put in your seasoning blend? Because everyone does their ribs different, and I love hearing about it. I mean, I've had them from all the way from, you know, like true dry rub ribs to some goofy like garlic parmesan ribs to every which way you can imagine. And they're all great. They're fantastic. So I want to hear how you guys do it. I want to start these discussions and keep it going. If you guys like what you're hearing so far, hit the like button, subscribe button. We keep food coming on this channel all the time, over and over. And I've had a lot of amazing experiences. So more cool videos like this are going to come out with just some real legends on it. So stay tuned for all that. So one of the most important things is the smoke, right? And I'll do a whole nother video on smoke and fire management and what we're looking for when we talk about clean smoke. But clean smoke should be transparent. You should basically not see it.
That's super clean smoke.
You know, Tuffy always said, treat the meat like the star and let the smoke be an enhancement. And I think a lot of people get lost in that when they're smoking ribs. But if you take that step to actually do the proper smoke management and get that clean smoke, like he calls it, the cool smoke, you're going to see a huge difference in all your barbecue, no matter what you're smoking. So what are we smoking on, right? We had two really cool pits we were smoking on. One was an indoor Old Hickory wood and gas assist, really cool unit for indoor operations. You know, if you're in food service or anything like that, the thing was outstanding because you burned actual logs the entire time. But the second, Tuffy brought his Jambo pit. And if you have never actually touched a Jambo pit, I mean, it is the most amazing piece of machinery I think I've ever cooked on. It was just perfection from start to finish. I mean, the way that the doors moved, the way the firebox was built, just everything. It was outstanding. So we ran the smoker between 250 and 275. Now, a lot of people like to run their ribs a little bit lower than that and use the 3-2-1 method. That's not what we did here. These ribs actually smoked for just about 4 hours, and there was no 3-2-1. It was actually a really cool kind of different process, which was really kind of had me thinking differently. It was really cool. So we ran 250 to 275 degrees, and we smoked them for about 4 hours. Now, here's one of them actually going into the Old Hickory smoker, and this is pretty cool because as they go in there, one of the tips that Tuffy said was you want to scrunch that meat up when you place them on the smoker rack. And that's important because if you sprawl them out, and honestly, I always used to sprawl them out because I thought that they would cook a little bit better. They're gonna dry out a little bit quicker. They're not gonna be as succulent. But if you scrunch it up, you're actually pushing all that meat together, and it's gonna cook together and get closer to the bone, and it's gonna give you a meatier, thicker, more consistent rack of ribs. So one interesting little thing. A lot of people like to spray their ribs. That's something we did as well. I'm going to link up a spray bottle that is outstanding. It's really cool because the piston kind of floats at the bottom. So any angle you're going with the spray bottle, it works really well. It's dynamite. I'm going to also link up the shakers, all those kind of things, so you guys can actually have all the same kind of great tools that were used in this video. We're spraying with apple juice. That's a common question. What are you spraying with? We are spraying with apple juice. It kind of just adds a little bit extra sweetness, and we're doing a dry rub rib, so this just adds a little more caramelization, a little more texture. Also moistens the bark because it's forming so you don't have too crunchy of a rib. So let's take a look at the ribs. We're going to take a quick check at the ribs and see how they're looking. They're looking great. You can see that there's some color forming, a little bit of a smoke grab. Just to keep them hydrated, a quick little spritz of apple juice. Not a ton, but just to kind of keep the moisture going. And that's all dependent on your pit. If your pit is like a pellet smoker and it's well insulated where it's going to carry a lot of moisture in there, you don't want to add extra liquid. But if it's a little bit drier of an environment, you're going to need to moisten it up. On to hour 2, give it a spritz again. Looking fantastic, really doing some amazing things. We're going to spray them and let them go for just a touch longer before we get to the wrapping process, where we're going to wrap these guys and let them keep cooking. So once you're set up, you got to be organized. You got to have your station set up. You want to move kind of quickly because you don't want these ribs out of the smoker for too long. So one really cool tip is taking the meat and scrunching it up with your hands, kind of pulling it away from the tips of the bones. That's going to give you a really awesome competition presentation and clean it up nicely. Next, a light dusting of cayenne pepper, very light, just to kind of wake it up and give a little bit of activity. And using a tea diffuser is really fantastic for this. Next is some cool smoke rub, some honey, brown sugar, little spritz of the apple juice, and a brushing of some melted butter. And this is a really important step because what it's going to do is create a liquid inside this foil that's going to actually braise your ribs as they're cooking. So you wouldn't think about that it's really important, but what it's going to do is break down all that connective tissue, all that collagen. We're going to flip these ribs over do the same thing on the bone side and then wrap. Now when wrapping, wrapping is very important because you want to make sure that the bones don't pierce through the foil. You want this to be a tight envelope. So you're going to want to use 2, maybe 3 sheets of foil for it if you don't have a really good heavy duty foil. But foil is the way to go. There's a lot of conversation about, do we do butcher paper, do we do foil? Foil is a great heat conductor, and it's going to lock all this in and lock the steam too. So foil works absolutely perfect for this. Now these are going to go back into the smoker meat side down for the rest of the cooking time. So as it's going, all those juices that are going at the bottom are continuing to heat up and bubble and cook that meat and cook the meat side of the ribs. The bone side is going to get tender by the steam, but the meat side, where you want that little bit of resistance and chew and tenderness and succulence, that's all cooking on the bottom side of the actual foil package where all the liquid is and all the juices are. Now hour 3, these things have been cooking for a while. These things are looking fantastic. We're going to open them up and see what the doneness looks like. Use a little thermometer. A nice sharp thermometer is a good metric to see how your ribs are cooking and how the resistance is. Another thing is you can go by temperature. Now, hour 4, these things are looking incredible. And here's a great little tip from Tuffy on how to check for rib doneness.
Sometimes on the big end of that rack of ribs, it might be tight there, and then so I will check multiple spots, but that one was just probably so tender. It's like,
I mean, look at these things. They look beautiful. He's sticking in the pointer. There's very minimal resistance. You can see all those juices at the bottom. So we're going to want to wrap these back up and let them rest for a touch so it reabsorbs some of that juice. And when we're ready to serve, we're going to flip them and put them on a grill and just let them kind of lacquer. They'll naturally glaze and take some of those sugars, and it'll just set them just enough so you have just that perfect little caramel on the top. Hopefully you guys took a lot away from this. I mean, this Pitmaster certification was the most amazing 3 days of classes I've ever taken in my life. And it was so cool to spend like late night and early morning sessions with Tuffy and working the smoker and actually cooking on the Jambo and all that kind of cool stuff. But, you know, if you guys are going to smoke some stuff at home, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to, you know, answer any other questions you guys might have on smoking. Leave them down in the comments. Like I said, I'll actually abbreviate the timeline down in the comments. I will put links to all the stuff that you saw today on here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that this video helps take your barbecue game to the next level. And if you guys love cooking and you love smoking meat, check out this smoke short rib video I have. Hit the like and subscribe button because there's constant food on this channel all the time. So stay safe, stay healthy, and smoke on.